Chapter 29. Our house was a 14-room typical San Francisco post-earthquake affair. We had a succession of roomers bringing and taking their different accents and personalities and foods. Shipyard workers clanked up the stairs. We all slept on the second floor except Mother and Daddy Clydell, in their steel-tipped boots and metal hats, and gave way to much powdered prostitutes who giggled through their makeup and hung their wigs on the doorknobs. One couple, they were college graduates, held long adult conversations with me in the big kitchen downstairs until the husband went off to war. Then the wife, who had been so charming and ready to smile, changed into a silent shadow that played infrequently along the walls. An older couple lived with us for a year or so. They owned a restaurant and had no personality to enchant or interest a teenager, except that the husband was called Uncle Jim and the wife Aunt Boy. I never figured that out. The quality of strength lined with tenderness is an unbeatable combination, as are intelligence and necessity when unblunted by formal education. I was prepared to accept Daddy Clydell as one more faceless name added to Mother's roster of conquests. I had trained myself so successfully through the years to display interest, or at least attention, while my mind skipped free on other subjects, that I could have lived in this house without ever seeing him and without his becoming the wiser. But his character beckoned and elicited admiration. He was a simple man who had no inferiority complex about his lack of education, and even more amazing, no superiority complex because he had succeeded despite the lack. He would often say, "I've been to school 3 years in my life. In Slayton, Texas, times was hard, and I had to help my daddy on the farm." No recriminations lay hidden under the plain statement, nor was there boasting when he said, "If I'm living a little better now, it's because I treats everybody right." He owned apartment buildings and later pool halls and was famous for being that rarity, a man of honor. He didn't suffer as many honest men do from the detestable righteousness that diminishes their virtue. He knew cards and men's hearts. So during the age when Mother was exposing us to certain facts of life, like personal hygiene, proper posture, table manners, good restaurants, and tipping practices, Daddy Clydell taught me to play poker, blackjack, Tonkin high, low, jick and jack, and the game. He wore expensively tailored suits and a large yellow diamond stick pin. Except for the jewelry, he was a conservative dresser and carried himself with the unconscious pomp of a man of secure means. Unexpectedly, I resembled him, and when he, Mother, and I walked down the street, his friends often said, "Clydell, that's sure your daughter. Ain't no way you can deny her." Proud laughter followed those declarations, for he had never had children because of his late arriving, but intense, paternal sense. I was introduced to the most colorful characters in the black underground. One afternoon, I was invited into our smoke-filled dining room to make the acquaintance of Stonewall Jimmy, Just Black, Cool Clyde, Tight Coat, and Red Leg. Daddy Clydell explained to me that they were the most successful con men in the world, and they were going to tell me about some games so that I would never be anybody's mark. To begin, one man warned me, "There ain't never been a mark yet that didn't want something for nothing." Then they took turns showing me their tricks, how they chose their victims, marks, from the wealthy, bigoted whites, and in every case how they used the victim's prejudice against them. Some of the tales were funny, a few were pathetic, but all were amusing or gratifying to me, for the black man, the con man who could act the most stupid, won out every time over the powerful, arrogant white. I remember Mr. Red Leg's story like a favorite melody. Anything that works against you can also work for you once you understand the principle of reverse. There was a cracker in Tulsa who bilked so many Negroes he could set up a Negro bilking company. Naturally, he got to thinking black skin means damn fool, just black, and I went to Tulsa to check him out. Come to find out, he's a perfect mark. His mama must have been scared in an Indian massacre in Africa. He hated Negroes only a little more than he despised Indians, and he was greedy. Black and I studied him and decided he was worth setting up against the store. That means we were ready to put out a few $1,000s in preparation. We pulled in a white boy from New York, a good con artist, and had him open an office in Tulsa. He was supposed to be a northern real estate agent trying to buy up valuable land in Oklahoma. We investigated a piece of land near Tulsa that had a toll bridge crossing it. It used to be part of an Indian reservation but had been taken over by the state. Just Black was laid out as the decoy, and I was going to be the fool. After our friend from New York hired a secretary and had his cards printed, Black approached the Mark with a proposition. He told him that he had heard that our Mark was the only white man colored people could trust. He named some of the poor folks that had been taken by that crook. It just goes to show how white folks can be deceived by their own deception. The Mark believed Black. Black told him about his friend, who was half Indian and half colored, and how some northern white estate agent had found out that he was the sole owner of a piece of valuable land, and the northerner wanted to buy it. At first, the man acted like he smelled a rat, but from the way he gobbled up the proposition, turns out what he thought he smelled was some person's money on his top lip. He asked the whereabouts of the land, but Black put him off. He told his cracker that he just wanted to make sure that he would be interested. The Mark allowed how he was being interested, so Black said he would tell his friend and they'd get in touch with him. Black met the Mark for about 3 weeks in cars and in alleys and kept putting him off until the white man was almost crazy with anxiety and greed, and then accidentally, it seemed, Black let drop the name of the northern real estate agent who wanted the property. From that moment on, we knew we had the big fish on the line, and all we had to do was pull him in. We expected him to try to contact our store, which he did. That cracker went to our setup and counted on his whiteness to ally him with Spots, our white boy. But Spots refused to talk about the deal except to say the land had been thoroughly investigated by the biggest real estate concern in the South, and that if our Mark did not go around raising dust, he would make sure that there would be a nice piece of money in it for him. Any obvious inquiries as to the rightful owner of the land would alert the state, and they would surely push through a law prohibiting the sale. Spots told the Mark he would keep in touch with him. The Mark went back to the store 3 or 4 times, but to no avail. Then, just before we knew he would crack, Black brought me to see him. That fool was as happy as a sissy in a CCC camp. You would have thought my neck was in a noose, and he was about to light the fire under my feet. I never enjoyed taking anybody so much. Anyhow, I played scary at first, but just Black told me that this was one white man that our people could trust. I said I did not trust no white man because all they wanted was to get a chance to kill a black man legally and get his wife in bed. I'm sorry, Clydell. The Mark assured me that he was the only white man who did not feel like that. Some of his best friends were colored people. In fact, if I didn't know it, the woman raised him was a colored woman, and he still sees her to this day. I let myself be convinced, and then the Mark began to drag the northern whites. He told me that they made Negroes sleep in the street in the North, and that they had to clean toilets out with their hands in the North, and even things worse than that. I was shocked and said, "Then I don't want to sell my land to that white man who offered $75,000 for it." Just Black said, "I wouldn't know what to do with that kind of money." And I said that all I wanted was to have money to buy a home for my old mom, to buy a business, and to make one trip to Harlem. The Mark asked how much that would cost, and I said I reckoned I could do on $50,000. The Mark told me no Negro was safe with that kind of money, that white folks would take it from him. I said I knew it, but I had to have at least $40,000. He agreed. We shook hands. I said it would do my heart good to see the mean Yankee go down in some of our land. We met the next morning and I signed the deed in his car and he gave me the cash. Black and I kept most of our things in a hotel over in Hot Springs, Arkansas. When the deal was closed, we walked to our car, drove across the state line, and on to Hot Springs. That's all there was to it. When he finished, more triumphant stories rainbowed around the room, riding the shoulders of laughter. By all accounts, those storytellers, born black and male before the turn of the 20th century, should have been ground into useless dust. Instead, they used their intelligence to pry open the door of rejection and not only become wealthy, but got some revenge in the bargain. It wasn't possible for me to regard them as criminals or be anything but proud of their achievements. The needs of a society determine its ethics, and in the black American ghettos, the hero is that man who offered only the crumbs from his country's table, but by ingenuity and courage is able to take for himself a Lucullan feast. Hence, the janitor who lives in one room but sports a robin's egg blue Cadillac is not laughed at but admired, and the domestic who buys $40 shoes is not criticized but is appreciated. We know that they have put to use their full mental and physical powers. Each single gain feeds into the gains of the body collective. Stories of law violations are weighed on a different set of scales in the black mind than in the white. Petty crimes embarrass the community, and many people wistfully wonder why Negroes don't rob more banks, embezzle more funds, and employ graft in the unions. We are the victims of the world's most comprehensive robbery. Life demands a balance. It's all right if we do a little robbing now. This belief appeals particularly to one who is unable to compete legally with his fellow citizens. My education and that of my black associates were quite different from the education of our white schoolmates. In the classroom, we all learned past participles, but in the streets and in our homes, the blacks learned to drop S's from plurals and suffixes from past tense verbs. We were alert to the gap separating the written word from the colloquial. We learned to slide out of one's language and into another without being conscious of the effort. At school, in a given situation, we might respond with, "That's not unusual." But in the street, meeting the same situation, we easily said, it bees like that sometimes."